I'm going to show you how to set up the basically the king of all tents. It's called the teepee. Once you camp in one of these things, there's nothing like it. You can have a fire right inside it, which we'll get to in a bit, but it's incredible. But it is very, very important that you set it up right. That means the cover has to be close to the ground. Sometimes I'll set it up where the cover is off the ground, but we will set it up today with the cover close to the ground. That allows for the proper ventilation of smoke and everything else, which I will explain later. In total, you're going to need 14 poles. Now these poles are, I use balsam fir, and the 14 poles, in order to cull them out of the forest, it took me about, I bet you it took me a month to get those poles, because I wasn't going to take just any tree. I took the trees that I figured would die and wouldn't make it. The poles at the base for a 15-foot lodge, which this is, the poles at the base should be 3 inches in diameter to 3.5 inches in diameter. They should be approximately, I like to get them at about 20 to 25 feet tall. To make it look aesthetically pleasing, the pole should project roughly 6 feet above the top of the lodge. Now the top of the lodge is here. That little tongue area, this tongue area here, this is what is considered the top of the lodge. So 6 feet above that, all poles should project. It gives it a really cool look. Not only that, it also allows the water to drip off better, but sometimes it's not possible to get those kind of poles. Let's set her up. This is a typical pole that we're going to be using. They're lightweight. This one's approximately 20 feet long. Now what you're going to need is you're going to need 3 poles. You're going to need 3 poles for the tripod and 1 pole for the lift pole. Okay, once you have you have to put your teepee cover out, spread it out, get as many wrinkles as possible out of the teepee cover, okay, so it's flattened out. Your next task is to take your lift pole, right, that's going to be the biggest pole in the lodge. The way a lodge works is that at the top it's all tied together. The largest pole, which is the lift pole, doesn't really get tied into the whole mix. You want the top apex, the apex of the teepee, to be as narrow as you can. That'll be explained in a bit. Your lift pole must be laid up the center of the teepee. Here is what ties your lift pole on. Okay, so that goes like that. That's done. Perfect. Teepees rely on a tripod. Okay, the whole lodge is set on one tripod, which is 3 poles, clearly. Poles are marked as north, south, and door pole. For clarity, I've marked on these poles north, south, and door. Makes sense. Here's a critical point. You lay your tripod poles on top of your lift pole. Important. The poles must be equal distance from the door to the lift pole. These are equal distance. Set them side by side. Done. Next, what you want to do is, this is your door pole. It sits on top, okay? Your tongue. My hand here measures 3 inches exactly. You want these poles to lay on top of the lodge pole 3 to 4 inches below the base of the tongue, which is right here. This is the base of the tongue, right here. You want the poles to lay 3 inches below that. So I've already marked it here. I'll show you how I do it. Hand on top, right at where the bottom of the tongue is, and then I just simply move my poles over to that point. Next, you take your door pole, put it over top of those. Okay? Ensure that the poles are at the base here, are equal to the base of the tarp. Same with the door pole. Then what you want to do is you want to mark it. I'll just use a Sharpie. You can use a knife, you can use whatever you want. So you want to mark it where your tie point is going to be. Okay? That's your tie point right there. Just mark it up and you're good. the points of the tripod have to be absolute. If you mess this part up, the teepee will never sit right. It'll look off. Not only that, you'll have a problem with the way it ventilates, especially when you have a fire inside it. Now, in my particular teepee, I use a wood stove. It's great, but I'll explain that in a bit. So remember, when you set up your tripod, your north pole, your south pole, and your door pole sit just like I have them here. You'll see the north and south pole go down to the base of the teepee. Your door pole goes along the side of the teepee where the door will be. All right? 3 inches below the bottom of the flap is where you want that lash to set up. Okay, so what I do is I like to lay the poles on top of something which is elevated off the ground. It's just easier to work on it, that's all. So what you want to do is you lay your poles out, right? Make sure that your marks all line up. All right, the marks that you previously marked on the cover. Door pole on top of the north and south pole. North pole has to be on the left side of the south pole. There's reasons. I'll explain it to you once I set up the tripod. Wrap a simple clove hitch around your door pole and then start wrapping your rope around the other 2 poles. Finish it off with what they call a frap. Okay, it's known as a frap. What you do is you run the rope in between and you tighten it up. All right, this should be fairly snug but not super tight. Leave a tail. The reason for the tail is you're going to want to add another piece of rope on. That is to wrap all the poles. Simple figure 8 knot will do this, or a bowline knot. That's in some other videos of mine. So I'll tie a bowline for this one. Right? There we go. We're done. Okay, so that's ready to go. Now your tripod is ready for setup. Okay, I've brought the poles over to my teepee site, which is actually there. I have a lot of overhanging branches, so I always set it up out here and then I walk it in. I'll show you how that's done. That's the door pole. That's the north pole, and that's the south pole there. That's critical. The north pole must be to the left of the south pole. The door pole is here, okay? Then we'll walk it up. You take the door pole, and you walk it in. Okay, let's get her in position. Good. Basic tripod setup now. Alright, door pole, north, south. Now here are the poles, lay in. Okay, at the top of the teepee here you'll see the crotches. Starting from the door pole, which is here, you're going to lay your next 3 poles on this side. And then you're going to walk around and you're going to lay your other 3 poles on that side. Okay, now the idea is up at the top, you're going to take that rope that I added on earlier. This is where this rope comes in. All the notches are filled with poles. Those notches, that's it. This thing is solid. Once I wrap this rope, I'll walk the rope around the teepee, and I'll show you how that's done. You wrap the rope around, tighten up the knot, and your tripod's done. Okay, I've tied the tarp onto the main lodge pole, which is the lift pole, ensuring that down here the bottom of the pole is even with the bottom of the tarp. You can see it underneath the tarp, and a simple knot right here holds the tongue onto that pole. Okay, the lodge is set up now. These little pegs in the front, we call them the little people. They actually stitch the teepee together. So you roll the tarp around from both sides. Okay, from the back you roll it around, and then you stitch those little people into the canvas, and it locks the canvas together. Then you adjust your poles. On the inside, you adjust your poles out to take the tension on the tarp. Alright, and then at the top, you put in your flap poles. And the flap poles hold out your flaps. Now, those flaps are totally adjustable. You can open them up, close them, whatever you have to do depending on the weather. Right now, I have them open for full burn. That means like if you have an open fire in there.